Listen. There is a particular kind of silence that fills a room when a fundamental truth has been violated, but no one dares to speak its name. It is not a peaceful quiet. It is a heavy, metallic silence, thick with unsaid words and unseen glances. You feel it in your home. You feel it in the space between you and the woman who shares your bed. She is physically present, but her attention, her essential self, has drifted somewhere else. You can sense the distance like a change in atmospheric pressure. You notice the new passcode on her phone, the unexplained hour gap in her schedule, the defensive edge in her voice when you ask a simple question. Your conscious mind wants to rationalize, to explain it away with stress or work or a passing mood. But your older mind, your primal mind, knows better. It knows the scent of deception. It recognizes the behavioral patterns of a partner who has, in spirit if not yet in body, already left the building. This agony is uniquely modern because it is amplified by the very structure of our world. You're not merely dealing with human frailty. You are confronting an ancient biological drive that has been supercharged by technology. The social media feed, the dating app, the professional network, they are not just tools. They are perpetual marketplaces. They provide a constant, hypnotic scroll of potential alternatives, of greener pastures, of higher status mates. This digital environment whispers a corrosive question into the ear of the dissatisfied. Is this the best you can do? It turns a private doubt into a public spectacle of comparison. Your pain is the pain of a man competing against a phantom army of idealized men, each represented by a curated profile and a flattering camera angle. The betrayal cuts deeper because it feels less like a choice and more like an inevitability, a force of nature you are powerless against. Therefore, we must move beyond hurt feelings and moral outrage. Sentimentality is a luxury we cannot afford when diagnosing a fatal flaw. To understand infidelity, specifically the pattern of chronic, serial infidelity, you must look past the individual and into the blueprint of human nature. In this analysis, we will dissect the archetype of the perennial wanderer. We will identify the 8 warning signs not as random faults, but as coherent symptoms of a deeper psychological orientation. These signs are the cracks in the facade, through which you can glimpse the true, turbulent forces at work beneath the surface of polite society. To comprehend why certain patterns of behavior exist, you must first travel back to a world without cities, without laws, without the comforting myths of modern romance. Imagine the ancestral plains. Survival was precarious. For a woman, the act of creating a child was an immense investment. 9 months of pregnancy, years of lactation, a period of extreme vulnerability. Choosing the wrong mate could mean death for her and her offspring. This is not a metaphor. This was the daily reality that shaped our minds for hundreds of thousands of years. From this crucible of necessity emerged the central, non-negotiable imperative of female sexual strategy, hypergamy. Hypergamy is the drive to secure the best possible genetic material and the most reliable possible resources for potential children. It is an instinct, not a conscious thought. The ancestral woman who is careless in her selection, who settled for a weak, unskilled, or low-status mate, saw her children starve or be killed. Her genetic line ended. The woman who is acutely, even ruthlessly, attentive to signals of strength, competence, status, and provisioning saw her children live and thrive. We are all descendants of these ruthlessly selective women. Their calculating gaze is built into the very foundation of the female psyche. This biological imperative leads to a potential conflict, one that nature resolved with a brutal kind of logic. Evolutionary psychologists call it the dual mating strategy. The optimal solution for our ancestral mother? Form stable, long-term pair bond with a man who is reliable, loyal, and a good provider, the good father. This ensures consistent resources and protection. But simultaneously, and often covertly, seek to conceive children with a man who displays superior genetic traits, dominance, physical symmetry, sharp intelligence, the high-status competitor. This provides her offspring with the best possible genes for survival and success. This is not about cheating in the moral sense. It is about playing the odds, about hedging her biological bets to maximize the reproductive success of her lineage. This is where the modern concept of personality collides with ancient wiring. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of our psyche that contains all the instincts, urges, and traits that our conscious self, our social persona, cannot accept. For a woman, the social persona is often the loyal partner, the devoted girlfriend, the faithful wife. But her shadow contains the ghost of that ancestral assessor, the part of her that is perpetually, unconsciously scanning the social horizon, evaluating men against an innate and often unspoken hierarchy. When her conscious life, her relationship, falls too far out of alignment with what her deep biology senses is optimal, the shadow grows restless. It begins to leak out. It manifests not as a clear thought, I will betray my partner, but as powerful, diffuse feelings, a profound dissatisfaction, a nameless yearning, a conviction that she is settling, that she is not truly seen or fulfilled. These are the modern, civilized translations of an ancient, biological alarm bell. The alarm is signaling one stark message: the genetic and resource opportunity cost of this relationship is too high. Your value, in the ruthless calculus of the deep psyche, is deemed insufficient. So, let's be clear and remove the veil of romance. The idea of one true love is a beautiful cultural invention, but it is a recent and fragile one. The biological imperative is not oriented toward permanence with one person. It is oriented toward optimization. Loyalty, at this primordial level, is not fidelity to a person, but to the potential quality of the offspring. When a woman's environment, and today her environment is a global digital marketplace, constantly signals that better, higher value options are not only available but are actively presenting themselves, the ancient machinery is activated. It bypasses reason. It speaks in the language of instinct and emotion. You may be a good man. You may be a reliable partner. But if you are not perceived, at the deepest, most unconscious level, as the best possible man within her perceived sphere of access, you are living on borrowed time. This is the hard, unromantic, biological root. The warning signs we will detail are merely the visible tremors caused by this deep tectonic pressure. The ancestral environment had a brutal, clarifying constraint. A woman's mate market was her tribe, perhaps the neighboring tribe. It consisted of a few dozen, maybe a few hundred individuals. Her assessment was based on tangible, immediate reality. Who was the strongest hunter, the most skilled craftsman, who provided reliably, who commanded genuine respect. The feedback was direct, and the choices were finite. This constraint forced a crucial psychological adaptation, the ability to pair bond, to invest deeply in a chosen mate despite his flaws, because the realistic alternatives were few and the cost of constant wandering was social exile and catastrophic risk. The modern condition has shattered this constraint. We have built a cage of infinite options and called it freedom. The smartphone is not a communication device. It is a metaphysical portal. It grants her, from her living room, access to a curated global hierarchy of men. Social media presents not real people, but the highlight reels of male achievement, the vacations, the professional wins, the displays of social proof. Dating apps are a literal catalog, reducing human beings to swipeable commodities, ranked by an algorithm that prioritizes the most photogenic, the most strategically boastful, the most immediately enticing. This is the nuclear reactor. Her ancient hypergamous instinct, the drive to seek the best, evolved for a world of dozens. It was not designed for a world of millions. The instinct has no off switch. So, it runs perpetually, overheated, flooded with data it cannot possibly process in a healthy way. The good father she is beside her, a real, flawed, human man with a receding hairline and a mortgage, is now being subconsciously compared, every single day, to a phantom army of high-status competitors. These phantoms have no bad days. They never leave their socks on the floor. They are presented as pure potential, devoid of the boring, grinding reality of actual partnership. This is the central pathology of our time, the comparison of your lived reality with someone else's manufactured fantasy. And fantasy will always win in the short term. Into this neurochemical storm steps the third actor, the architecture of validation. This is the dark psychology that manipulates the primal instinct for social belonging into an engine of perpetual dissatisfaction. Likes, follows, matches, and DMs are not innocent social gestures. They are quantifiable, dopamine-driven units of social and sexual market value. They provide a continuous, addictive drip of external affirmation. For a woman whose unconscious mind is questioning her mate choice, this becomes a lethal feedback loop. The attention of new men, especially men perceived as high status, is not merely flattery. To her deep psyche, it is market confirmation. It is a signal that her value is recognized by the marketplace, that she could do better. Each notification is a micro hit of dopamine that says, "You are correct to be restless. Your options are expanding. Your current partner is limiting you." This external validation slowly erodes her internal commitment. It weaponizes her natural desire for social esteem against the stability of her relationship. She is not consciously saying, "I will trade my partner for these likes." But she is being systematically trained to associate feelings of worth, excitement, and self-esteem with the attention of new males, rather than with the deepening of a bond with an existing one. This creates a specific, modern archetype, the perpetual bride. She is addicted to the feeling of being chosen, of being at the center of a new courtship narrative. The stable, secure love of a long-term partner becomes boring because it lacks the anxiety, the chase, the uncertainty, the very dopamine spikes that the modern world has taught her to crave as proof of life itself. The commitment becomes the problem to be escaped, and the potential of the new suitor becomes the solution. She is trapped in a loop of seeking the feeling of securing the optimal mate, rather than the reality of building a life with one. Finally, the modern narrative provides the perfect alibi for this biological and psychological cascade. It is cloaked in the language of empowerment, self-actualization, and toxic positivity. The shadow's restlessness is not framed as a dangerous, ancient instinct run amok. It is reframed as a sacred journey. You deserve happiness. Don't settle. Listen to your heart. These are culturally sanctioned incantations that transform a potential moral failure into a spiritual imperative. The complex, difficult, often mundane work of building trust, navigating conflict, and forging a shared identity, the work that creates meaning, is dismissed as compromise or losing oneself. The drive to abandon a flawed but real man for a perfect phantom is celebrated as brave. This is the ultimate trap, a biological impulse supercharged by technology and then morally justified by the prevailing culture. The individual is absolved of grappling with their own shadow. Instead, they are told to follow it, to be true to themselves, when that self is a chaotic chorus of unintegrated primal drives and socially engineered addictions. Thus, the man is left holding the shattered pieces of a broken contract, often blamed for his own betrayal. He was not growing, he was too needy, he didn't support her journey. He failed to compete with an illusion. This is the modern trap. It is a system perfectly designed to take the ancient, dangerous fire of hypergamy, pour gasoline on it, and then convince the arsonist she is simply seeking the light. Let us now synthesize the terrible clarity we have unearthed. We began with a primal drive, hypergamy, the ancient, non-negotiable imperative to secure the best genetic and resource potential for offspring. We gave it a face, the dual mating strategy, the biological logic of the good father and the high-status competitor, existing in tense union within the female psyche. We observed this ancient machinery housed in its modern vessel, the human woman, with her conscious persona of loyalty and her shadow filled with the restless ghost of the ancestral assessor. Then, we witnessed the catastrophic failure of the modern condition. We saw this precise, powerful instinct placed into an environment of infinite option and quantified validation, a world for which it was never designed. The smartphone became the altar where the shadow is fed a constant stream of phantom rivals. The architecture of social media and dating apps became the engine that transforms a natural assessment mechanism into a pathology of perpetual dissatisfaction. The language of modern therapy and empowerment became the alibi, reframing a dangerous biological cascade as a sacred journey of self-discovery. The warning signs, the secrecy, the resentment, the triangulation with other men's attention, the constant narrative of unfulfillment are not random. They are the precise symptoms of this archetype, the perpetual bride. She is not in love with a man. She is in love with the process of being chosen, with the dopamine spike of new potential, with the fantasy of an optimization that can never be complete because the marketplace never closes. She is, at her core, at war with reality itself. And reality is you, a finite, flawed human being. To commit to you is to accept a limitation, to close a door. And for this archetype, a closed door is a kind of death. So what is to be done with this dark knowledge? You cannot control another's biology, psychology, or their submission to modern seductions. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. Their central, unshakable doctrine: you must rigorously separate what is within your control from what is not. Her choices, her loyalty, her integration of her own shadow, these are her domains. They are not yours. Your domain is your own perception, your own judgment, and your own value. The first, harsh step is to remove the fantasy you have projected onto her. See her not as a mythical soulmate, but as a human animal, subject to the same primordial currents and modern corruptions as anyone else. Your pain often stems less from her actions, and more from the corpse of your own illusion. Then, you must turn that analytical eye inward. The Stoic asks, what does this betrayal reveal about my judgment? Did I see the warning signs and explain them away out of fear? Did I confuse a woman's potential with her character? Did I neglect my own development, believing the contract was permanent and my value static? This is not self-flagellation. It is the ultimate empowerment. It moves you from the role of victim to the role of a scientist who has learned a cruel but valuable fact about his world. Your task is to become a man for whom betrayal, while painful, is not existential. How? By building a self that is not contingent on any single relationship. Your purpose, your competence, your integrity, your physical sovereignty, these must be your bedrock. You must become so engaged in the hierarchy of your own achievement that you no longer have the energy to police another's loyalty. A woman partners with that man not because he is watching her, but because she cannot afford to look away from him. He is not a supplicant in her marketplace. He is a creator of his own. In the end, you are not choosing a partner. You are choosing a problem. There is no problem-free option. The question is, which set of problems are you willing to shoulder? The problem of building something meaningful with a woman of integrated character who has wrestled with her own shadow and chosen loyalty as a conscious, daily discipline? Or the problem of managing the chronic instability of the perpetual bride, whose loyalty is conditional on you outperforming an infinite horizon of ghosts? The red pill is not the list of warning signs. The red pill is the cold understanding that love, in the lasting sense, is not a feeling that happens to you. It is a judgment, followed by a contract, defended by action. It is a shared fortress built against the howling winds of biology and the seductive whispers of the modern void. Some women are architects. Others are mere visitors, tasting the air, already dreaming of the next destination. You must develop the perception to know the difference, and the courage to act on what you see.